By PC Pod or Pad, you are listening to and quite possibly watching Paid to Play. I am Rob Farker, your host for this regular exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits of you that you worry make you seem silly, geeky or even odd, into your income-generating life is one of the best things you can do. It might not be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear. Folks, I hope you had an awesome Christmas because I got a bit slack about my recording schedule. This is coming out right before the new year, if not a little bit after it. I did try to do a recording of this morning, but wound up going for about 40 minutes. So I'm begging the indulgence of my lovely wife, who is sitting right here beside me, playing a couple of games while I try and get it done, this time in about 10:15. So enough waffling, let's get straight into it. 2015 was a good bloody year for the Paid to Play podcast. I got back on the horse with Season 3. So yes, I reckon it was Season 3. April 2012 to March 2013, my rough schedule there was Season 1. And the two discrete chunks of podcasting I did in 2014 and 2015. Actually, no, that makes this year Season 4, doesn't it? Oh well, I'll have to adjust all my wish lists and everything that I did on the last couple of days. So anyway, my first posting was my last 2014 recording with Isaiah McKinney, and my first actual recording was with Paul Abstruse, tattooist and comic book artist, which wound up being episode 37. One major change to the podcast this year was bringing crowdfunding into the mix via the Patreon website, which you can find at www.patreon.com/paid-to-play, all one word. I managed to get a couple of backers within 24 hours of starting the campaign. Some lovely old mates of mine jumped on the bandwagon there, and eventually I got enough to meet my first milestone for a few glorious months in the middle of the year. Unfortunately, things dropped off for a little while, but just within the last week, I have had someone come on board at the record $5 per episode level. So thank you very much to Christian Taylor. Awesome to have you on board, mate. Thirdly, there was Paid to Play live at Tropicon, the first ever live chat for Paid to Play I've ever done, on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people with 3 guests at once. So it was a whole bunch of firsts there all wrapped up in one. Tropicon, Cairns' first pop culture convention, was an awesome experience, even if there were a few teething troubles. And quite frankly, hosting another Paid to Play live at another pop culture convention somewhere is something that I would love to do again sometime. Of course, the year wasn't perfect, as you will know if you've been following the show, especially the even-numbered episodes where I rabbit on about what I'm doing about getting paid to play. I did have a couple of crises of faith during the year where I thought about repurposing the podcast, and even toward the end of the run, cancelling it entirely. I think I put a bit too much pressure on the podcast. I was trying to get it to do too much, and when it wasn't meeting my expectations, naturally I got a little bit depressed. One of the things I've done there is to just cut down on the amount of external stimuli and things that I've been subscribing to coming in, because a lot of my rather lofty goals resulted in seeing all these updates to freelancing websites and email updates that I was subscribed to. So sometimes I think when you're doing something you love, it's not a bad idea to maybe cut out some of the things that might turn you off of it for no good reason. Anyway, next thing I want to move on to is a couple of top 10 lists for 2015. I have 2 separate lots of statistics here. Firstly, the podcast listens and downloads that were gathered by the Blueberry PowerPress plugin on my WordPress website for the podcast. So these were the episodes that were either listened to on the site or downloaded via iTunes or via your subscription to the site via RSS. So anyway, at number 10 we had episode 44, which was Kristen Baker of Kristen Baker Coaching, the first person to actually get directly in touch with me via the form on my website saying, "Hi, I found you unsolicited and I'd like to come on your show." So thank you again, Kristen. It was great having you on. Episode 9 was the last episode I actually recorded in 2014 with Mick Archer of the Wicked Goblin, Cairns' currently only friendly local gaming store. At number 8 we have episode 48, one of my off-week even number episodes where I talked about doing things rather than talking about them. Number 7 was episode 53 with the local filmmaker and fan of the 80s, Des Green. Number 6 was episode 51 with Link Biggins, who runs Cairns' premier scooter sales and service establishment, Scooterco. Number 5 was episode 55, requested by my wife Vicky, Beck and Ken Drake of Zoo Studios. If you'll pardon me, I'm getting a bit of a frog in my throat from perhaps trying to talk a bit too quick. And not to mention the after effects of a head cold across the weekend. And if you'll forgive the barking dog. Right on topic, as a matter of fact, a Zoo Studio does incredible photos of people's pets and animals in their studio. That's Suki agreeing with me there. At number 4 we had episode 49, which was my chat with Niai Ruffino, who is an independent comic book artist and colourist who's done work for all the major labels, quite a lot of covers, and particularly has made her name working with Zenoscope Entertainment, an independent comic book imprint. At number 3, episode 46, my first 2 guests at once chat. Actually, no, sorry, my first 2 guests at once chat was episode 3 with Kasput Comics and Collectibles. But my first chat where I had one person in person and another person chatting with the two of us over Skype, and that was Charlie Kennel, the organiser of Tropicon, and Grant Robinson, the organiser of Sugar CityCon. 2 pop culture conventions in regional Queensland that went off last year. Episode 2 was episode 57, my chat with cosplayer Evie Dantes, aka Dante's Inferno. And number 1 was episode 43, my chat with yet another cosplayer, but not just any cosplayer, the winner of the 2015 Australian Cosplay Championships, with her incredible costume of La Carlotta from Phantom of the Opera, Major Sam Cosplay. Thank you very much to all you folks for coming on the podcast. It was absolutely fantastic having you. And on to my second top 10 list. I decided to venture into the wilds of YouTube this year, and although I didn't actually do any video chats with my guests, I did convert the chats into still videos with fixed backgrounds and uploaded them to YouTube, and I do have a top 10 of my guests from there. At number 10 was episode 29, which I actually recorded in 2014 with Trevor Longino, the marketing and public relations manager for a company called GOG.com, formerly known as Good Old Games, an online digital rights management free sales site for as many of your favourite video games from yesteryear as possible, and some of the coolest stuff from the last couple of years. Number 9, fellow podcaster and author of both works on how to get your book published, and also her own cracking run of thrillers with an occult bent, the Arcane series, Joanna Penn, also known as JF Penn, and blogger on her site, The Creative Pen. Thank you very much, Joanna, and again, I'll apologise for the hash that I made of our recording, and thank her so very much for bailing me out of it. In number 8 was episode 50, another one of my even episodes where I talked about taking it easy once you're done with your project rather than rushing straight into something else. Episode 42 was number 7 in the YouTube top 10, and that was my chat with Ash Chain of Ash Chain Tattooist and Lady Chain Cosplay. Number 6, another cosplayer, my first cosplayer to come on Paid to Play, Vicky Vic for episode 41, who has now gone on to starting a YouTube show with a couple of fellow cosplayers, one of whom is CD Studios Cosplay, and I apologise, I cannot remember the name of the third host. Their show is called Get In Character, and they do an incredible job of it. They've got their own studio and their own studio set, and it's a fantastic magazine-style show. And if you like cosplay, you are bound to enjoy it. So go check it out. Number 5 on my top 10 popular list, Wouldn't You Know It Again, episode 57 with Evie Dante's Inferno. Number 4, episode 49 with Niai Rufino. Number 3 was episode 43 with Major Sam Cosplay. Number 2 was another oldie, episode 5, my chat with Gavin Dunn, who does the pop culture one-man band music project called Miracle of Sound. He's just put his 6th compilation album of all the pop culture related songs that he's done out. Not only that, this year he even made his own personal heavy metal album called Metal Up. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to him, do a search for Miracle of Sound. You will be doing yourself a favour, if you'll forgive me from paraphrasing Molly there. And number 1 was actually a tie of 2 episodes. Episode 46, my chat with Charlie of Tropicon and Grant of Sugar City Con, and episode 39 with Beathy of Beathy Photography, the awesome cosplay photographer. So again, to all you fine folks, thank you very much for coming on the Pay to Play podcast. It was great having you. And also, if I haven't said so already, and I'm sure I'll say so again at the end of the episode, thank you very much for everyone who listened and who enjoyed those episodes so I could put those 2 top 10 lists together. The obvious takeaway from those 2 seems to be that you folks like the cosplayers. Thankfully, I did have a few paid cosplayers wind up following my Twitter feed shortly after Tropicon, where I cosplayed Officer Bradford from the computer game XCOM Enemy Unknown. So with any luck, I'll be able to get a few of those on the show for next year. So speaking of 2016 and season I thought it was 4, but it really turns out it's season 5. I'll have to adjust those wish lists that I put up. So yes, or actually hang on a second, April 2012 to June 13th, 2013 was season 1, 2014 was season 2, 2015 was season 3. I am getting my math mixed up horribly, folks. Yes, next year is going to be bloody season 4. Sorry. Alright. So what are my aims for Season 4? Firstly, just keep it at the hobby level. Pushing to monetize or to really try and get behind my goal of helping everybody get paid to play in an evangelical, bolshy kind of way, they were the 2 things that really stripped the fun out of just doing this podcast. So I'm really not going to push it on that angle. I want to keep doing it because it's something that I want to do, because it's something that I enjoy doing, it's fun, and the challenge of it is also fun. In order of trying to retain my sanity throughout the whole exercise, though, probably might have just heard my wife having a good chuckle at that anyway, but one can but hope. One can hope. I want to try and keep it to 20 fortnightly episodes a year. The way I've got my Patreon goals at the moment calculated, that will cover hosting and domain name fees with my current level of backing. If you folks still want to back, www.patreon.com/pay-to-play, please rock along and back me for that. I'd love to skim a little bit off the top for my own purposes. Those copies of the Dungeons & Dragons core rulebooks and Pathfinder aren't going to pay for themselves, folks. So yes, like I said, the basics are covered. I want to leave myself space for the other things I want to do with my spare time this year, and I do have a little bit of a list. I'm going to drop the in-between episodes where I was talking about pay-to-play, my own efforts to get paid to play, and the reasons I kind of spell out in my last even numbered episode 68. go have a listen to that if you haven't already. Check out the YouTube one. It's 10 minutes where my actual podcast chat was 20. This one's getting up to 15, so I've kind of blown that goal, but I think I'm trying to keep it fairly informationally dense rather than rushing off on tangents. I will leave that kind of video log content to my personal page, which I'll link to. You'll probably see something around about this space right now where I'm waving my hand. I'll try and edit it in using YouTube's label and link facility. I might hold off actually starting the season until I've got a few recorded chats under my belt, so I've got a bit of a buffer, and just so I've got that confidence there that yes, I've got the momentum up to keep going. And it looks as though, unfortunately, I'm not going to be doing many, if any, on-site recordings. Unfortunately, my netbook finally broke down a couple of weeks ago. I have had an offer of assistance from a fan of the show and a fella who basically gets in and helps his mates out wherever the heck he can. I'll try not to impose on him too much. We'll see how we go. One of the things I was thinking about was trying to set myself a topic, maybe doing 10 of the 20 shows focused on that topic, and the other 10 just, with folks wherever it took my fancy. But that was also from the perspective of trying to drive my own pay-to-play career. So I probably won't do that. One of the things I want to do with the overall stated goal of the podcast is try and make the focus less about categories of play. I was watching a video where someone was chatting with, we'll keep with the cosplay theme here, renowned worldwide cosplayer Yaya Han, and again I'll see if I can put a link up here to her YouTube page and other associated sites. One of the things people tend to ask about was how she got into cosplay as a career, and she tends to come back and say that she started before cosplay was even any kind of career option or even a hobby that was broadly known about. She was just doing it because she started trying to make costumes of the characters, what the characters in her favourite anime and various other things wore, and she loved doing it, and she kept doing it, and she went to conventions, and next thing she knows, she's getting famous for what she's doing because she does it so well. So that's the kind of thing I really want to get to, not focus on careers or the labels that we like to put on the play that we see people doing, but just the stuff that we do ourselves that maybe we think, nah, no one would want to pay me for that, or even, we don't even know what the heck it is we do, we just love doing it. And maybe figure out that process of how other people who were in that same situation just sort of kept pressing on and took advantage of the opportunities that were presented to them when they found them. So yeah, encourage you to keep doing your thing rather than try and pigeonhole yourself into a job title or category that maybe doesn't even really fit. I think that was one of my problems last year. There are a couple of things that I would like to take pay-to-play down, some things I'm curious about. I mentioned that when I went into YouTube, I didn't approach it from an angle of actually interviewing people on video. I know that there are a lot of folks out there who do it, and it's something that I am genuinely curious about. I do have the basic kit to do those wonderful chats that you see where it's a Skype-based chat where the screen is split down the middle. Down the middle. And I'm sitting on that side of the screen, and my guest is sitting on this side of the screen. So yes, I would like to give those a go, and if I manage to make it something a bit more sophisticated, where I am actually sitting, my guest and I are sitting in front of the same camera, and we're doing a kind of actual chat show style talk, hey, that'd be great too. Also, I'm curious about what I can do with Patreon. I didn't really dabble with it too much. I was quite satisfied to just have that basic milestone of the basic expenses of pay-to-play being met last year, but I would like to see what I can do, maybe set myself a few more milestones, like perhaps a new bloody netbook to replace the broken one, maybe funding me doing pay-to-play live at another convention if it turns out to be an out of Cairns one, I would probably need to look at funding travel, accommodation. If I'm doing a panel there, I imagine entry probably wouldn't be much of a problem, because I'd already be sorting something out with the organisers anyway. But still, just any other expenses that might come up. I'd also like to see what I can do in terms of rewards. As I mentioned earlier on, I've got my first ever $5 per episode back, which is bloody great. And I'm sort of thinking, what can I do for him extra to say thank you for donating that much an episode? And what else can I do for the rest of my current backers? And what higher rewards levels can I set? Could I organise a Google Hangout with maybe a guest from one of my episodes where I put a little bit of cash in to cover their time, is a thought. But look, anyway, I think I've pretty much covered everything that I want to cover, and it's now local time, a little under 5 hours from the dropping of the ball in Times Square, if we had a ball and a Times Square in Australia to drop, or I guess maybe 4 hours if you're living in Sydney. So I do want to try and get this up and out there before New Year's passes here in Australia. So I just want to say in closing, thank you to everybody who was involved in the Paid to Play podcast in 2015 and all the years prior. Thank you very much, Vicky, for enduring my frustrations and crises of faith and questioning what the Paid to Play podcast was all about, and, you know, all my other personal dramas that I've inflicted on you on in the meantime. Thank you to everybody who gave of their time to come on the show. I have sent separate thank you videos to all you folks, and that was a fun little experiment to do, and I want to do that again in 2016. Thank you to all of my Patreon backers. It has been great having a little bit extra coming into the podcast, and it's fantastic to be able to cover those basic expenses. And thank you to everybody who has either come on board recently as a listener or a watcher, or has been with the show for a long while, especially you awesome folks who've been there since day one. I don't appreciate all of you folks, from backers to guests to Patreon, as much as I perhaps should. You all are incredible folks. I love you all. I would love to be in touch with you more often than I am, and I think that's one of the things, another thing I'd like to fix up in 2016, just have more opportunities to get together with you folks. But if you can, sign up on the Facebook group, Fans of the Paid to Play podcast, subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow the Patreon feed, or even, you know, chuck me a couple of bucks. Even if you just come in at the $1 an episode level, that would be $20 next year over the space of a year, so you can get access to the Patreon feed. And yes, I guess that's another thing I need to do, is just make sure I'm turning up regularly in all the places where I've got Paid to Play, especially with that Patreon feed. So I think we're now up to 24 minutes or so of assorted waffle, and I reckon it's about time to draw things to a close. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and I hope that 2016 brings you everything that you're looking for, everything that you are hoping for, and a whole heap of unexpected goodness besides. Happy New Year, everybody.